All right, we are almost finished with our time in Mexico. We started in Destin, Florida, and we've been talking about the roads, talking about our journey. And this video is actually us leaving southern Mexico at El Sabo, going into Guatemala, all the way into what we were looking at going into La Ceiba, Honduras. Come join us. We are entering El Sabo, Mexico, and finishing up our time in Mexico and going into the border and crossing into Guatemala. The border was smooth, just a little bit slow, and there's a couple things that we had user error on, which happens, but what can you do? So what we didn't do is we didn't get a physical Mexico stamp when we entered from Laredo, Texas. I don't think it was electronically done, but not physically done. And living in Central America for 15 years, I should have known that you have to have that physically done, because I just paid a bunch of fees in Honduras because I was missing those physical stamps. So that was definitely user error on that one. But what I wanted to, patience will get you through that border. It took us about 3 hours, and we were the only ones there going that way. But you can see the vegetation's getting really lush. We're getting into more tropical areas. And I'm not exactly sure where this bridge was, but it was beautiful. Once we crossed over into Guatemala, there's lots of rivers. I was amazed at how nice the roads have been the entire time. Maybe with a small exception on a little part of some of the beach roads. They were just smaller, not traveled as much. Lots of tumulus, which are speed bumps that aren't always marked or not marked that well. But there's so many rivers. This bridge was beautiful, and it was just a really, the trip kept getting prettier and prettier. We spent a couple extra days in Guatemala just for some extra stops. We ended up stopping in Flores, Guatemala, as well as El Rio Dulce for an extra evening. But this is kind of how the roads look. They are getting smaller, less traveled than what we were seeing in northern Mexico. Guatemala and Honduras, the roads were the smallest and kind of the most, that had the most traffic, and we moved the slowest. So that's also why we ended up doing 2 pit stops in Guatemala instead of 1, with the extra time it took at the border patrol, which I would say everyone was kind. It just took forever because, everything has to be done just so. But you can see right here, like, the roads are getting a little bit tighter. The vegetation is really nice, but it's really close to the road. And if you're behind a truck, you're behind a truck. There's not a lot of room for passing like what we saw in northern Mexico or on those Coyota roads. It's just a little bit slower traveling, but good thing. There's still tons of gas stations, and then there is a lot of little stalls along the roads, or when you enter the small little towns, which I'd say once an hour you'd enter a small town where you would be able to find a restroom, food, water, basic supplies, whatever that you need. So it was pretty nice. You can kind of see them a little bit here, just the small stalls, and you're also seeing a lot more pastures. Lots of cows, I would say, a little bit different from, it was beautiful, but you could definitely tell we're going into farmland. We saw a lot of palm trees, like the palm oil, like the palm farms, which was nice. It's kind of a bummer that it has been turned into farmland from the natural environment, but you can still see there are lots of greenery. We still have those beautiful mountains. They're not as kind of like skyscrapers like they were in Mexico, but what was really pretty is almost the trees made like a canopy. So it was a really beautiful trip. Wish we could have stayed a little bit longer, but now we are in Honduras, where you say, the land of Baleanas, and we entered La Ceiba, so we are almost there. We ended up taking the Galaxy Wave over to Roatan. My dogs were having a great time the entire time. They got to walk with us out to the pier. And then we did get on the Galaxy Wave. We're almost to Roatan right there. The dogs did great. Everyone was so kind and good with them. This is my dogs getting off the Galaxy Wave onto, their new home country, and they are already relaxed at home. And I was glad to be back in Roatan and just, get the heck out of the car. Woo, that was a great 11 days.